Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, with daily insight on the Nasdaq-100 Index, or the NDX, which is made up of 100 of the largest domestic and international non-financial innovative companies listed on the Nasdaq stock market. The NDX has been the barometer for U.S. large cap growth and also one of the best performing indexes over the last decade and a half, not to mention one of the most liquid index ecosystems in the world. Joining me this afternoon is Mark Marex, product development specialist with Nasdaq Index Research, to discuss Nasdaq-100 year-to-date performance, which companies have outperformed, and the reconstitution taking place at the close. Mark, it's great to see you. We've got a lot to cover this afternoon. Let's take a look at your first chart, and that year-to-date Nasdaq-100 performance is pretty remarkable.
It really is, Jill. Great to be back, closing in on the end of the year here, and assuming we don't have some sort of crazy events in the last 2 weeks, I think we're confident in saying that this is going to be a banner year for the Nasdaq-100, up 46% through yesterday's close. You can see all the other big market benchmarks here. The Nasdaq Composite, just a few points below at 42. And then you've got, in order, the Russell 2000, the S&P 500, and then the Dow Jones at the very bottom there, up 6%. Really, just an incredible story for large cap stocks. A tale of two worlds all year long. The Dow, and to a lesser extent the S&P, got punished in March and have had a slower recovery all year long. And even as the broader market has expanded the recovery the last couple of months, with the Russell 2000 coming up, ahead of the S&P 500, it kind of tells you the story that it's not just a tech large cap recovery. Like, the recovery has been broader, but because of the leadership in large cap tech, the other large cap market benchmarks just haven't really been able to play catch up as much to the Nasdaq-100.
Let's take a look at our second slide here, where we see the number of stocks that have outperformed. And Mark, wow, Tesla, it's a bit glaring there.
Yeah. I mean, this just kind of tells you the story, right? Top contributors to index performance of that 46%. You've got, 10 names that are contributing about 35 percentage points of that 46%. They collectively represent a little over half of the index over the course of the year. You can see Apple is the biggest contributor, Amazon number 2, Tesla number 3 at 5.5 percentage points. And you can see, obviously, on all the way on the right, the year-to-date returns for Tesla are just insane. I think insane or ludicrous, right, as they like to use that term in that company, are appropriate. And today's a big day for the S&P 500. They are adding Tesla finally. It's going to be the biggest addition to the index in history, probably going to come in at number 6 weighting, triggering, something like $100 billion in related trading activity for all the benchmark trackers and ETFs to buy into that name. I just want to point out the Nasdaq-100 added Tesla in July of 2013. The year-to-date returns are, 640, 650%. Since July 2013, when we added it, it's up over 2,500%. So that just kind of gives you an idea of, maybe a bit of a relative advantage of using a fully systematic methodology of coming up with a large cap benchmark like the Nasdaq-100 uses. There's no committee, there's no discretion involved. We've had that name in for almost 7.5 years now, and it's really helped the index outperform.
And Mark, let's wrap up with our last slide here, and we can see the additions and deletions coming into the Nasdaq-100.
Yeah, so for those who need a refresher, Nasdaq-100 reconstitutes once a year. You do have deletions and additions outside of the annual December reconstitution, depending on corporate actions and companies changing exchange listings, for example. But December is really the big month for changes to the index. So you can see here, we've got 6 additions that came in prior to this week. These are going effective after today's close. The 6 that are taking place right now, a nice mix of names that you've heard a lot about this year. Things like Match and Peloton, which have really outperformed given the work from home and sort of do everything from home trends all year long. And then another, couple of good tech names, Marvell, Atlassian, Okta, some cloud software names, and then one utility in there as well for good measure. So Pretty good mix of additions all year long. None of these are going to really impact the index all that much. They're going to come in at much lower weights than what you're going to see Tesla impact the S&P 500 with later today, given how long they waited to add it in.
All right, Mark, great recap. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.